My name is Mr. Whyzguy. We're gonna be watching the former President Donald Trump's CNN town hall with, her on screen. And yeah, that's what we're gonna be doing. And you read the title of this little short clip, so we'll just get right into it.
They were there proud. They were there with love in their heart. That was an unbelievable, and it was a beautiful day. And what I was asked to do, I wasn't involved in it very much. I was asked to come in. Would I make a speech? I made a speech. I said, walk peacefully and patriotically, many different things. In fact, I brought a list of things. I don't want to bore the audience, but we can go sentence after sentence after sentence of things I said and things I put out.
It just makes common sense.
Nancy Pelosi, Crazy Nancy, as I affectionately call her. Crazy Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington.
Oh yeah, the
charge,
bitch.
as you know, of security, and they
They're
did not
in charge
do their
of the
job.
National Guard. You're in charge of the National
They are
Guard.
Well, I offered them National Guard. I said, we'll give you soldiers, we'll give you National Guard, we'll give you whatever you want, and they turned me down.
You're
and in
acting
fact, she
defense
turned me down.
secretary.
She turned me down in writing. She turned me down.
But you're acting defense secretary.
Excuse me.
Miller, at the time, he says you never gave a formal order to deploy the National Guard. But when it came to that day,
just the opposite. Chris
tested-
Miller wrote a book, and he's a fantastic guy, and he was ready to go. They turned him down. If you look, the mayor of Washington, D.C., lovely lady, she said, we don't want it. We don't like the look. Nancy Pelosi said, oh, we don't like the look. If they would have had I offered them 10,000 soldiers. I said, it could be 10, it could be more, but I offered them specifically 10,000 soldiers. If they would have taken 500 soldiers, you wouldn't have had the problem. They turned it down. And if you look at the Inspector General report, he says they turned it down. They made a terrible mistake.
Well, Chris Miller was your acting defense secretary. He says you never gave that order. But back to what happened on that day.
He
You said
did
you
not
weren't.
say that.
He has testified that, Mr.
He
President.
did not say that.
But you said you weren't very involved that day. You did tell your supporters to come to Washington. You tweeted about it, about
Sure,
that
of
speech
course.
that happened on the rally.
Am I
so
allowed
when
to
they
say that?
when they went to the Capitol and they were breaking into the Capitol, smashing windows, injuring police officers, why did it take you 3 hours to tell them to go home?
I don't believe it.
I like how they're He's about to do the thing, but like I like how she fixates on the whole violent part aspect about the whole January 6th thing, and completely disregards the new videos that we saw about another thing that happened at the January 6th thing that came out on Tucker's Tucker on Fox News a while back, and how it took 2 to 3 years for that footage to come out to the public. And I'm like, seriously? Why were they holding on to that? Why were they holding on to they incarcerated the guy that was in that footage for I think he's still in jail. I think he just got released early because of that new footage that came out. Because everyone kept saying, oh, January 6th was this terrible thing, and everyone that was there should be in jail. And then it comes out with this footage that completely shatters that narrative of this January 6th being the worst thing since Hitler. And I'm like, that's not. I mean, they held up that narrative for a really long time, but the sad thing is that people, January 6th was 2 years ago. No one's really, and no one that all the people that believe it, defaultly, that don't really look into things, they just believe it defaultly, are just still gonna believe it defaultly and not gonna they're not even gonna know that this new evidence came out 2 years later, which kind of sucks. Actually, let me look it up. Let me find it. Oh yeah, Tucker Carlson released exclusive January 6th footage.
Within hours of January 6th, literally hours, you began to hear that day described as a deadly insurrection, and not described by one news outlet or one politician, but in unison.
This was published.
By all of them.
All right, so you guys can't really see it, but March 6th, 2023.
That's how history may record January 6th. But the tape that we reviewed from within the building on that day proves it was neither an insurrection nor deadly. Here it is.
January 6th, when an estimated 2,000 rioters breached the Capitol building, causing the deaths of 5 police officers.
Certain dates echo throughout history. December 7th, 1941. September 11th, 2001. And January 6th.
The mob beat officers with anything they had on them: hockey stick, a flagpole, a fire extinguisher.
Police officers died.
Donald Trump support.
That's a lie. Bullshit. Bullshit. Wait, I got the button.
Liar!
I also got...
That is one big pile of shit.
Exactly.
Who, of course, rioted and killed police officers.
By the evening of January...
Yeah, no police died in the January 6th thing. There was one incident that came out right after, and they said, oh, he died there January 6th. Turns out the guy died days after, and it was from a completely different... It wasn't because he got hit over the head or anything. It was... I think he died from like some sort of... I forget. It was some sort of natural issue that he had prior to... Like, he was an officer that was there, but then ended up dying 2 days later. And people just said, oh, well, he must have died because of the January 6th thing, because it was just this terrible riot that was so bad and evil, right? Yeah, right? No, he died from something completely unrelated to what happened in January 6th. But they still tried to spin it that way, which was so stupid.
To prove the insurrection was deadly, propagandists pointed to the death of an officer called Brian Sicknick. The mob killed Officer Brian Sicknick. That's what they said. It was their single most powerful indictment of the January 6th protesters and of Donald Trump and of Republican voters nationally. They repeated that claim for years. They are still repeating it. At first, they told the country that Officer Sicknick was murdered with a fire extinguisher.
Officer Brian Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher during the fight.
That story came from the New York Times, which is effectively the assignment editor for most of the rest of American media. It was a lie, untrue in any way. But only after that lie had hardened into conventional wisdom did the newspaper bother to retract it.
The New York Times has quietly retracted its story about the death of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick.
Oh, look at that. Well, look at that. And if you were not paying attention, it's easy to just believe that nonsense. Like there was only one casualty, Ashley Babbitt. She was a protester. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and one of the security guys that were just sitting behind the door open fired and literally shot her right in the neck, and she just bled out. It was just impossible. There's a whole video on that too. Maybe I'll show it. It's kind of gruesome though.
January 6th, the Democratic Party and its publicists in the national news media had settled on a description of what had happened that day. They distilled an enormous number of highly complex events that even now we don't fully understand, into a single emotionally laden political slogan, which they've repeated for years with remarkable discipline. January 6th, they said, was a deadly insurrection.
There was a deadly insurrection that the right wing is trying to cover up.
He incited a deadly insurrection.
Incited a deadly insurrection.
The violent, deadly insurrection on the Capitol 9 months ago, it was about white supremacy in my view.
A deadly insurrection. Everything about that phrase is a lie. Very little about January 6th was organized or violent. Surveillance video from inside the Capitol shows mostly peaceful chaos. But the slogan worked. The term deadly carries enormous emotional power, which is why they used it. Brian Sicknick, himself a Trump voter, had been transformed without his consent into a political martyr of the left. His memory was shamelessly exploited by the incoming Biden administration. In February of 2021, Sicknick's body lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda, where a parade of unscrupulous politicians made use of it. Here's Joe Biden.
Breaking down the doors, trying to overturn an outcome of election, and killing several police officers in the meantime.
That is one big
Brian
pile of
Sicknick
shit.
should not be reduced to a prop for the political ambitions of the Democratic Party. He was a human being. The facts of his life matter, including how he died. To this day, media accounts describe Sicknick as someone who was, quote, slain on January 6th. The video we reviewed proves that is a lie. Here is surveillance footage of Sicknick walking in the Capitol after he was supposedly murdered by the mob outside.
Oh, look at that.
By all appearances, Sicknick is healthy and vigorous. He's wearing a helmet, so it's hard to imagine he was killed by a head injury. Whatever happened to Brian Sicknick was very obviously not the result of violence he suffered at the entrance.
Mind you, this took 2 years to come out, for this video to come out, proving this is wrong. They were sitting on this video. It's not like they completely missed this. Like, that was just, wow. That was just, it's just, it's just bullshit,
To the
man.
Capitol. This tape overturns the single most powerful and politically useful lie the Democrats have told us about January 6th. And it was indeed a lie. The January 6th committee knew perfectly well that Brian Sicknick was walking normally through the Capitol after he was supposedly murdered by Trump supporters. And they know that because they saw this tape. We can be sure because the footage contains an electronic bookmark that is still archived in the Capitol's computer system. That means that investigators working for the Democratic Party reviewed this tape. They saw it, but they refused to release the tape to the public. Why? Because this tape would shatter the fraud they were perpetrating on the country. Because hiding the truth served their political interest. They lied about the police officer they claimed to revere. If they were willing to do that, then their dishonesty knew no limits. These are the pictures you've seen of January 6th.
Yeah, look at that.
They're familiar because they've been playing on a loop on every media outlet in America for the last 2 years. There's a reason for that. But it turns out there's quite a bit of video you haven't seen. And that video tells a very
look at
different
that.
story about what happened on January 6th. More than 40,000 hours of surveillance footage from in and around the Capitol have been withheld from the public. And once you see the video, you'll understand why. Taken as a whole, the video record does not...
Yeah, it's almost like it was mostly peaceful, like the Black Lives Matter protests, not riots, protests. This is a riot. What we see here, yeah, all that, yeah, that's a riot right there. It's mostly riot over there. The Black Lives Matter thing was mostly peaceful, but by that standard, this is basically peaceful. Yeah, sure. Some Black Lives Matter people ended up like setting police cars on fire, and there was some deaths, but it was mostly peaceful. Mostly peaceful. Just like this. You got people walking down, and there's agents everywhere. So it's not like they're stopping them from going into the Capitol. Like, this doesn't look like someone that's supposed to be here. That doesn't look like someone that's supposed to be here. These guys look like people that's supposed to be there, and they're just walking through.
Was an insurrection. In fact, it demolishes that claim. And that's exactly why the Democratic Party and its allies in the media prevented you...
Oh, that's a riot right there. You see all those people with all those flags? That's a full-blown riot. 100% violent right there.
...you from seeing it. By controlling the images you were allowed to view from January 6th, they controlled how the public understood that day. They could lie about what happened, and you would never know the difference. Those lies had a purpose. They created a pretext for a federal crackdown on opponents of the Uniparty in Washington.
Our office wanted to ensure that there was shock and awe, that we could charge as many people as possible.
The first thing you notice from viewing the full video record of January 6th is just how many people entered the Capitol building that day. Hundreds and hundreds of people, possibly
that looks so violent right
there.
there.
2 hours. The crowd was enormous. A small percentage of them were hooligans. They committed vandalism. You've seen their pictures again and again.
Yeah, they shouldn't be doing that.
The overwhelming majority weren't. They were peaceful. They were orderly and meek.
Yeah, just like the Black Lives Matter mostly peaceful protests. Mostly peaceful protests, or the Summer of Love as they would like to call it. Okay, so you know what I think is kind of disrespectful? Going to someone, looking at them, looking at their stuff, and then leaving without saying anything. Yeah, that's a little bit disrespectful. So I think you should not do that, and leave a comment down below. Thank you.